Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem, as you could hear, I can actually talk without sneezing. The first time in a week. We're learning as a schus refuah shlema feilan chaya baserach. We're on Kuf Yud Gimel Amid Beis, about 10 lines from the bottom. Soyer hamishtalech. So we're going to have to remind ourselves of the Mishnah. So the first part of the Mishnah was paras chatas, a para aduma, and then we said Soyer shtalech shehikar b'chutz potter. Both of these things are potter, even though you brought them b'chutz. Shenemach el pesach hayom moed lo yeheviu, and it's all going to be from one pasuk. The pasuk says el pesach hayom moed lo yeheviu lahakriv karban Hashem. The person is I'm not finished sneezing. There's a lot of dust here also. The pasuk is saying that it's that parsha in the beginning of Vayikra, where it has a long discussion about that you have to bring the karbanos in. You have to shecht. The first part, the first 7 psukim are about shechting the karbanos, and the last 2 are about being mal of the karbanos b'chutz. And the Torah says ve'el petzach ayil moed lo yehevi. He didn't bring it to the ayil moed lahakriv karban Hashem, and then it continues l'fnei mishkan Hashem. So the Mishnah said that the para aduma and the Sar Mishtalech, we learn from the first pasuk from El Pesach Moed Lo Yehevi. Then the pasuk, the Mishnah is going to continue. The rest we'll get back to in a minute. That those are all from Lifnei Mishkan Hashem. That you learn out from the second part of that pasuk. Okay. Back to Gemara. Sar Mishtalech. V'raminu. The pasuk says in the pasuk says, "Oy carbon." The hack carbon Hashem, the Mishka Hashem dam yichach l'shahu dam shachazayim mekar v'amay. But the pasuk also uses a lashon carbon, lack of carbon Hashem. Sheme'aneh afilu koche b'dei kabayis. I might think that one would be chayev for doing a shchutei chutz, even on something which is just b'dei kabayis, where someone had taken something, he dedicated an animal to be used, to be sold essentially for kedushas ha'mammon, that its money should be used for fixing up the Beis HaMikdash, or for dealing with the costs of the Beis HaMikdash. So we say no. Why would I think that? Because B'dei Kabayis says shenikru carbon. Shenamav nikra ves carbon Hashem. This is the pasuk. V'nakrev es carbon Hashem ish Hashem motza klizav atzado utzamid tabas ogel. He found a klizav, a golden cleave, a tzamid, or a ring, tabas, tzamid, or a nose ring, tabas, a regular ring, ogel, a round one, bakumas. Think that's it, maybe an earring. It's talking about giving different things as a b'dei kabayis to Hashem, and we call that a carbon. So maybe I would think when the Torah uses the lashon carbon, when it says that shchutei chutz is going to be chayiv karis, it should also include things that are given as b'dei kabayis. That the Torah is only mechayiv for shchutei chutz, something that was roy to go to the oil made. B'dei kabayis is not roy lovely with the oil made. It's kept in there's no chiyuv to be maleh, to do anything with it in the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, kachrik b'dei kabayis is excluded. She'einin ruyin. Oitzias elu she'einin ruyin v'lo oitzias sar shalech shuru lavi al pesach hayomay. But then the Gemara says, the Brisa says, I would think, so that excludes kachrik b'dei kabayis, which is not roy. But maybe the Sar Mishtaleach, which is Roy Lavi El Pesach Hayomait, the Sar Mishtaleach, which is the Sar Lazazel, on Yom Kippur, you have to bring the Sar Lazazel together with the Sar Lashem. You bring 2 izim into the Beis HaMikdash, and you do a goyrel in the Beis HaMikdash, and then the Kohen Gadol says a vidui on them, So they do have a royal Lovel Beis Hamikdash, Eloy Mayid. So it should be included in Shchutei Chutz. Talmud Loimel Hashem. The Torah says Lashem. It has to be something. It's not just that it's brought into the Beis Hamikdash, but also has to be something that's dedicated to Hashem. It's supposed to be has to be a carbon, something that's nisala, that's brought as a carbon. The Sar Mishalech is not brought as a reich nichayich. It's not burnt to Hashem. It's thrown off a cliff to provide a kapara for the Yidden, but it's not an offering, so to speak, to the Rebbeinu Shalom. So if it's excluded from Lashem. So we have a kasha, right? This brisa is saying it's coming from Lashem. It's named Mishkan Hashem, and our Mishnah had said specifically that Tzar Mishtaleach comes Vel Pesach Hayil Mayid. So why? What? How do we understand this tira? So more like kasha. Kan koydam hagrala, that which we say that it comes from, that we need miyuchad lashem, that we need lashem. The pasuk of Mishkan Hashem is before you do the gairul, then the sire has a din that has to be brought into the azara for the gairul and for the viday. But kan la'achar grala, but that's an our Mishnah, which says you could even learn it out from El Pesach Hayil Mayid. It's talking about after you already did the gairul, so you don't have to bring it in anymore. It's over. It's shaychus to bring brought in. It's finished. But you still, even after that grala, it still needs to be brought in. It still has to remain in actually for the vidui of the kohen gadol. It means before vidui, it still is. It needs to be excluded from Hashem, and achar vidui, it comes from the pasuk al Pesach Hayil Mayid. Okay. The Gemara. So again, let's go back to the Mishnah to remind ourselves again. So we have the same dichotomy in the Mishnah itself. That our Mishnah, Taka said that the Para Aduma and the Sar Mishtaleach are learned from El Pesach. They're excluded. That they're not going to have a din of Shchutei Chutz or Halah B'chutz because of El Pesach Hayil Mayid. And then the Mishnah continues, Hareveya B'hanirva, someone who was born an animal that was born a person, or a person that was born an animal. So these are both sulam, that it can't be brought as a carbon anymore. Vehamuksa, it was set aside for Avodah Zarah. Vanevet, it was worshipped. So again, that passes it to be brought as a carbon. Vahamachir, something that was sold for a dog, an animal that was traded for a dog. So the animal then is possible to be used as a carbon. Esnan, something that was set aside to pay a zayna. Va'kloyim, va'treifa, v'yotzei and all these different psulim of karbanis. Shekriv mechutz potter. They're all potter for being makriv of them mechutz. Shenem alifnei mishkan Hashem. The pasuk quotes a different pasuk, not El Pesach Hayil Mayid, but rather the second pasuk of Lifnei Mishkan Hashem. Kosher Elav Lifnei Mishkan Hashem in Chayav and Elav. Zok the Gemara. Haravei Varnida. Fraktim Varnirva. Fraktim Mara Vahanami Tepiklei Pesach Hayil Mayid. Once an animal becomes a nirva or a vei or a nirva, it's no longer a kosher or carbon, so it can't be brought to there's no chiv to bring it to the Pesach Hayil Mayid to be brought as a carbon. So why don't we learn it out from there? Talk to Gemara. Bishlam Reveya v'Nirva Mishkachaslei. Reveya and Nirva could really technically squeak in under El Pesach Hayil Mayid. That the Shinu Meikara v'Hadar Rabbi. If they were first hukdash to be a carbon, and after it was already set aside to become a carbon, and it became someone was reveya the animal, or the animal was reveya a person. So since it had a period of time that it could be brought to the oil mayid, it's not excluded from the pasuk Vel Pesach oil mayid, since it was chazui. So it was El Pesach oil mayid. It did have a chiv to be brought El Pesach oil mayid, like Rashi says. B'shlomo Revev Nevish Kachatol the Itzrich Lemutinim Elahakriv. Dr. Shinu V'Hajar, you have to learn it out from the pasuk of Lashem, because where it was first hukdash and then it became pasul because of Revev Nevish. It came in the chazu kvar, since it was chazu v'itchu, and later it became pasul also Revev Nevish. Ru'uyim krina, but it's considered roi lavoi al pesach hayil mayid. Shenir kvar v'loy matam el pesach. Deklavem hachi amakra. Val pesach hayil mayid loy heviu b'shenir lavoi v'acha kach shachtay. B'chutz chayv. Val pesach hayil mayid loy heviu, that the Torah says he didn't bring it to the pesach hayil mayid, but if he's near a lavoi, but if it was near a lavoi and then it became and then he shechted it b'chutz, then he's going to be chayiv. Aval Sar Shalech, like then Rashi comes to answer why Sar Shalech doesn't have the same, because Sar Shalech loses its whole chiyuv, its whole reason for going into the azara after the vida. So the Gemara is saying that anything that has first that it's royal lavai is not going to be excluded from El Pesach Hayil Mayid. It's going to have to come from El Mishkan Hashem. Practical Gemara, if that's the case, El Muksa v'Nevad. So, but Muksa v'Nevad, we're going to have a problem, because Muksa v'Nevad is something that was set aside to be an Avodah Zarah, or to be used for Avodah Zarah, or a person bowed down to it. Ein oisam davar she'ein shaloi. Reve'ev and never can passel, because it's a fact. Once you reve'ev and never, it becomes passel. But if someone is, if it's saying that we only need the Lashem in a case where there was first hukdash, if a person is mekatzah, something was already hukdash, it's not going to be effective to make it passel. It's not going to work to make it that it's no longer able to be brought as a carbon. It's not going to have the status of a muksa that can't be brought as a carbon, or a neva that it was worshipped, because you can't be oived something that was already set aside as a carbon. If it was prior to it being set aside as a carbon, what you do has some has an effect. You can, if you worship the animal, so you made it something that's possible to be brought as a carbon. But once it was made to a carbon, it belongs to Hashem. You don't have power anymore to be oived it. It's like if a similar way of looking at it is, if I can't be oived someone else's animal and I see the guy going, so he's going on his way to the Beis Hamikdash, was carbon Pesach, and so I'll mess him up. I'll be oived his animal. It's not within your power. It's the same thing if something was hukdash already, it's not within your power. So the Gemara, no. We're talking about kachim kalam. Talking about was hukdash not for kachim, but kachim kalam. He says kachim kalam are not considered mamon gavaya, that you can't be mekatzet lavay dezara or be oived lavay dezara. Kachim kalam are still considered to be mamon bailam. The Tanya umala amal bashem. The rabbi is kachim kalam shem imayne. He did Rabbi Yisrael Glili. Yisrael Glili says the gabi the din of the gabi when someone makes a shvuah to deny that he owes something. So you bring an asham me'ilis. So he says on that kachim kalam are going to be excluded. They're not going to be considered that it belongs to. It's not mama bayim that has. Then he's mal b'Hashem. When the Torah says a mal b'Hashem, it has to be there was b'dafka b'Hashem. It's coming to include that kachim kalim are considered the mammon of the owner. That when if he denies, I think it means that if he denies that he owes it for someone, that he's going to be chayiv to bring an asham. Whatever the point is over there, but the effect for us is that it's going to be possible to have a muksa b'nevad on kachim kalim. Reveya and Nirva Dabar Erva. The reason why Reveya and Nirva have to be learned from Mishkan Hashem is since it's a Dabar Erva, it can apply on whether it's Kachim or Kachim Kalim. It's going to be able to, but since it has Shas HaKosher, it needs to be learned from Hashem. And Muksa and Evad could be it was first Avodas Kechavim, but Kachim Kalim. It's Avodas Kechavim. Since Avodas Kechavim, it can only apply to something that belongs still to the Bailam. It's talking about Kachim Kalim, and according to Rabbi Yisrael Glili, and that's how you have that it has a prior time when it was able to be, it was considered that it was able to be brought al Pesach Hayil Ma'id, and therefore it's not excluded from that pasuk. It has to be from Mishkan Hashem after that point, that's excluding it, that it's not going to be chayiv for Kedushay Chutz. And finally, Esnan umechir klayim yotzedayfen. What about the last 4 cases of the Mishnah? That all of these, we say that this is, even Rabbi Yisrael Glila would be masking that Kachim Kalim would not help, that even Kachim Kalim would not be Mum and Bailam for these purposes. It would a person, we would say on these things that it's he's not able to Eino Demoisen Davar She'eino Shaloi. So the Gemara has to answer, the Vlad is Kachim. They're going to be talking about where they became an esnan, he sold it as an esnan, or meaning he used it to pay for a zayna, or he used it to buy a kelev, or it was a vlad of a climb in Yetzer Daifen. It's talking about what these are the vlad of Uber inside of the mother, who is Kachim, and Kasava Vladi Kachim have a Yasan Hein Kadashim. When they first leave the mother, that's when they become Kaddish. So they have, while they're in the mother, before they're born, they still have the ability that at that time they're royal lavoi la'oil mayid, because they first become Kaddish after they're born. Once they're Kaddish, then we're going to say that it's so after they're born, we're going to say that they're going to be also to be brought. You're going to have to say from Lashem. It can't come from the first pasuk of what do you call it? As Mikdash Hashem, because these had a period of time while they were uber that it did not yet apply to them that they were kachim.
So when were they were born? The mother was Mekudesh.
The mother was Mekudesh while she was pregnant. But that doesn't apply to the Vlad.
Right.
And then it became, let's see the Rashi. It's a long Rashi, but it's Estan Mechir Klein V'Yetzedevim Vlad is Kachim Kleima. Hanach Etzrachanu Lemutinu Milahakriv Karman, that we come from Karman Hashem. Le'nafkim El Pesach Chayil Meir Al Karcha B'Shenir Kfar Mari. Talking about where it was at one time, it was supposed to be burned into El Meir. Lemishkachas El Vlad is Kachim. Be'iril Hu Psul B'Mei Iman. It became possible B'Mei Iman. The mother became, let's say, an Estan and a Mechir while it was by the mother. The Niru Lava El Pesach Hayel Mayid Kain Shenasu Estan and Mechir, where it was able to be brought to the El Mayid before it became an Estan and Mechir. In Baal HaKaves Iman, if you wanted to be Makav the mother, Hayuhein Ba'ein El Pesach. Hayuhein Ba'ein El Pesach. They would be roy to go into the Beis Hamikdash. Because if we're talking about where he was makdashit, we wouldn't find it. You can't be, there's no din of Esnan. We would say, an Esnan, even on a Kashim Kalaf, he she'enon shaloi. Omikron nafkalam b'tmura. If it was already an Esnan. And then he later was makdashit, Mel Pesach nafki. V'chein klayim v'yotzedayfen, the aktashinu mishenado, Mel Pesach nafki. El b'vad is kashan, the yikara, Im ima niru lavai. Kstava blood is kachim v'yasan hein kadeshim b'lei dasan miskadeshes. So they first become kaddish when they are born. Hilka chal esnan mechir alein im nasan lo over al shel mukdashim be'esnan. It's not talking about we gave the whole animal. He gave specifically this vlad. So it was mukdash. He was makdash the vlad, but the hektish first takes effect when they're born. But they're already mukdash that they were able to say that they have on them that they're el pesach hayel mayid. That they have the ability to be brought to El Pesach Hayom Bayid. But later on, when they get the Esnan, now it's going to have to be, so we're not going to be able to parcel them from El Pesach Hayom Bayid, you're going to have to parcel them from El Mikdash, Es Mikdash Hashem. Okay. So the Mishnah continued. We talked about, so we had 3 machloikasin between Rav Shimon and the Tanakama in the Mishnah. We said Bali Mumin. The Tanakama said Bali Mumin whether Bali Mumin Kavuan or Bali Mumin that it's a temporary Balmum Ivrin. They're going to be potter. Rav Shimon says a Balmum that is only temporary is going to be chayev and a loisa say if you bring it bachotz. And we had a similar question about Tairim that it didn't yet come the time they weren't old enough to be brought. The Tanakama says they're potter altogether, and Rav Shimon says the chayiv for a loisa say because they're going to eventually be able to be brought. And finally, we said oisei v'espenai, where he's makar of the mother, let's say bachutz, or he killed the mother on that day, so the child cannot be killed on that day, and it will be possible if he does. So we say, according to Rav Shimon, there's going to be a lav if you bring it on that day, since it's only a temporary isser, that it's mechutz zman, that eventually it will be able to be brought. He says there's a lav. So before the Mishnah, the Gemara is going to get in the next Gemara about what the lav is according to Rav Shimon. But first he goes, why do we need 3 examples of the shita of Rav Shimon that anything that is temporarily precluded from being brought is a lav? So why do we need these?
Where are we?
We are Kuf Yadalit Amid Aleph by the 2 dots right in like the middle of the Amid. So we need all 3 examples that Rav Shimon holds that something that is only temporarily not able to be brought, there's a lav if you bring it bachos. Utsrichi, the Itana Bali Mumin, if we would have just said Bali Mumin, a Bal Mum Sha'avar, a temporary mum, I would say Mishum Dim Isi, because a mum is something that the Rebbe Shalom does not want. It's must to bring. It's degrading to bring something that has a mum to the Rebbe Shalom in the Beis Hamikdash. Avol Tayrin, but an immature bird, it's not yet old enough. The Lemisi, Emo the Moidi Leiler Shimon. Maybe that's close enough to being a carbon. To being a good carbon, that the Chacham would be masking to Shimon that there's a lav to bring it. Vitan a Tyrin, and if I would have said Tyrin, Mishum Delay Chazi, Be'edchi. A tyre it's not at all, from the time it's born, it's not capable of being brought as a carbon. And it was, so it's pushed away. Avobali Mumin, the ichsi ve'idchi, but a balmum that at one point was able to be brought, but then it became a balmum and it became possible. Maybe Rav Shimon would be masking to the Rabbanan that is very far, something that was ichsi and it was pushed away. You mask him to the Rabbanan that it's not even going to have a lav; it's totally not considered shkutei. I'm sorry. Mishum de psula de gufaya. because these are both things that there's psulim in the animal itself. Aval oisev es benoi, the psul where you're not allowed to bring a child together with you're not allowed to shech the child together with its mother on the same day. So if you shechted, for example, the mother, you can't bring the son, and if you bring it bachutz, you're going to be it's puzzle, and therefore there won't be a chutz. But you could wait to the following day, and then you could bring it. So Shimon says there's a lav on that. The psula me alma, but that's a psul that's not in the animal itself. There's an external reason because you shechted the mother on that day. Kasi law. Ema moidele rabbanon Rav Shimon. Maybe the rabbanon would be masim to Rav Shimon that there's at least a lav because this is pretty close. It's not even an intrinsic psul in the animal itself. Shrichas. That's why we needed all three of these examples that the rabbanon and the Rav Shimon argue on all three of them. Shahayir Rav Shimon. So we said, because Rav Shimon says that something that will eventually be able to be brought is not going to have, it's going to have a lav if you bring it bachutz. My time with Rav Shimon, where did Rav Shimon get this lav from? Amri loy, Amri Shlakish, to Amakro, Lisasan Kol Ashar Anachnu Oisim, Poi Hayoim. The Torah says, the Rebbeinu Shalom said to the Yidden in the Midbar, he said that you bring all these kabbanis now, you shouldn't do this, what we're doing now, and the pasuk continues, everyone can't do whatever they want, they can't bring all these kabbanis as they wish, because you haven't yet come to the menucha and the nachla. If you remember from yesterday, we said menucha is talking about the 14 years after the Yidden get into Eretz Yisrael, the 7 years of conquering and followed by the 7 years of distributing the lands. And Al Nachla is when the Beis HaMikdash comes. But he's saying that you don't do like we're doing now, Ish Kol Asher Hayasher Be'einav, that you could bring Karbanos now. Don't do that because when you leave, when you no longer have the Mishkan, don't do, everyone could bring wherever they want. So we darshan like this. Amalu Moshe Yisrael. Ki alisu la'aretz. Moshe Rabbeinu is telling you that when you get to Eretz Yisrael, Yashrus Takrivu, at that point, you're going to come to the time of Heter Abanus. You could bring Yashrus, those things that are what a person does, Isha Yasha Be'enav, what a person wants, something that's not a chiyuv, a carbon that's a voluntary carbon, a nadava, that he could bring on a bama outside, chayvus lo takrivu. But chayvus, those that you're mechayiv to bring, you can't bring. So, v'gilgol lagabi shila mechutz zmanu. That's talking about when you get into Eretz Yisrael, when the Mishkan is going to be in Gilgal, and then it's going to be in 14 years. The Mishkan was going to be in Shiloh, where it was going to be allowed to bring even karbanos that are required, karbanos chayva. But Kamalu Moshe loisasan. Moshe said, loisasan, don't bring that carbon prior to the time when you're able to. He's saying, don't bring the karbanos chayva in those 14 years. You have to wait till you build a Mishkan at Shiloh. And he's saying it with a lav, loisasan. So we see from here a lav on prematurely bringing a carbon that's going to be later able to be brought. So that's the lav that Rav Shimon talks about. It's a lav, according to this way of understanding, a lav that you're not allowed to bring something before its time. So, and we're saying, since there's a lav that you can't bring it before its time, even if you do it b'chutz, you're going to have that lav. Amr Rav Yirmiyah Rav Zera, Rav Yirmiyah said to Rav Zera, ihachi, if that's the case, milky lam nami lilki. If someone shechs and mechutz zman, then even if you bring it bifnim, meaning there was a Mishkan in Gilgal during that time, and we said you can't bring it was a bamas tzibur, but we said we have this pasuk saying you can't bring a carbon, a chayva at that time, and we're saying because it's prior to the proper time, you shouldn't bring, even though you bring it bifnim.
But like, in Gilgal itself, there was no carbon chayvus.
Even in Gilgal, you couldn't bring a carbon chayva.
They had to wait. Anyone who had a chait, they had to wait 14 years.
Yeah, I mean, listen, what do we do? Maybe they davened instead.
We never had it. All right.
Yeah. So tomorrow, but how could that be? Allah Rav Zera. Hakot of not gulase. Rav Zera said that there's no lav. You're not going to be chayiv malchus. So Dr. Gemara, what does this mean? Allah Rav Zera is a Rashi. Perk oisav esbenoi. Diktani kachem befnim saving zaboy mishum lav the oisav esbenoi. If someone brings oisav esbenoi, a carbon that's supposed to be brought. Like we said, it's you have to wait for the next day because the mother was already shechted. The time in Ein Shechal Apsum Shebeshar Shebeseh Shehein Below Yirat. So Tamalev Shebeseh Sharu Avakal. Mechuzah Pasalu. Mishani Rezera Hanach Lav the Mechuzah Zaman that cause of not Gul Essay the Chsibbe Essay Yiserik Nefarish Hasam. The Mishani not Gul Mechlal Lav Loi Kol Belav. The Shapsulim. He's asking that Rav Zera said over there that the Torah said that even if you bring something that's puzzle because it can't be brought till the next day, the Torah shortened that, or the Torah reduced that from being a lav to an essay, which he learns that from a pasuk. He learns that from a pasuk there that was switched into an essay. But he says if the Torah over here said specifically that it's a lav, you can't say that we're reinterpreting, we're reducing the lav into an essay. It means he understood over there. Over there we're talking about the law of lo yerotza, that if something is puzzle, you can't bring it into the Beis HaMikdash. You're not allowed to bring something that's puzzle in the Beis HaMikdash. He says, why don't you have that lav? So the Torah said that lo yerotza was reduced from a lav to an essay. But that's not we don't have a reduction in the lav of lo sasan. If you're saying there's an independent lav of lo sasan, whenever something is mechutz zman, right, that we're learning here, we're saying Rav Shimon learns as a second lav, in addition to not bringing something that's not supposed to be brought, that he's saying a second lav of bring something before its time, so that you should have that lav anyway. Says Dr. Gemara, Hani Milu Rabbanan. That was all according to the Rabbanan who don't hold of that which we said over there that there's not going to be a lav. That's according to the Rabbanan who disagree with Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon Hachanami, according to Rav Shimon Ein Hachanami, Rav Zera would agree that there would be a lav of lo sasan, even though there's no lav of lo yerotza. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Amar, Rav Nachman Yitzchak says a different text. Panim de Gilgal l'gabi shila kechutz dami. He says the pnim of Gilgal. Our whole question was gebayt on the fact that someone who brings in Gilgal, he's bringing it b'fnim, and nevertheless was saying that it's going to be chayiv. It should be chayiv for he should get malchus for mechutz zman. He says l'gabi shila it's kechutz dami. It's not considered to be b'fnim. That's also considered to be b'chutz, and therefore it's a isser. The isser is because of it's not an isser of bringing it early. Rather, it's the isser of doing it b'chutz. Rabba Amar time of the Rav Shimon Kedetanya Rav Shimon Omer Minayin l'zevech Pesach bebamas yachid b'shas isser abamashu. B'loisa say, how do we know that someone who brings a Pesach on a bamas yachid, a regular bama, not one of the bamas tzibur, at the time when bamas are also, for example, let's say in those in the years when you had the Mishkan Shilei, how do we know that he's b'loisa? Say Tamalay Ma'aleisuchal Izvayach Hazeh Pesach. You can't bring the Pesach b'chol shorecha. Yochel af b'shas heter abamas kain. I might say even at the time when the bamas are mutter, it should be also to bring the Pesach on a bama. Tamaloima b'achad sharecha le'matcha le'b'shasha chol yisrael nichlasim b'sharecha. We understand b'achad sharecha to tell you to exclude a time when everyone is going to a singular mishkan. Amos. So, meaning when you have, let's say, when you have a bama tzibur in when everyone has to go to, like Mishkan Shiloi, where and therefore the bamas are also like during the time of the Beis Hamikdash or Mishkan Shiloi, where everyone has to go to one place. There's no option of any place to go. In other words, a time
So
of
by Shilo, even though Pesach is not considered a carbon chayvas,
it's
in between.
It's in between, yeah. El Khair, it is a chayva. It's also a little bit of a carbon sibur. But the Torah is saying leisuchal lizbech as a Pesach. Yeah. Let's continue, right? Before we get into whether it's a chayva. Amos, inema acher chatzos. If it's after chatzos, karos nami mechayev. If it's after chatzos, then it should be mechayev karos. What do we need a pasuk to tell you? If it's the zman that you're supposed to bring the Pesach, and it's b'shas Isser Abamas, he's certainly chayev for shkutei chutz. El lav koydem chatzos, elamai it's koydem chatzos, and it's because he should have waited till the zman chatzos and brought it. So you see that there is an Isser to bring something. You see a lav from here, lesuchal, to bring something before its time. So no, la'olam la'acha chatzos. Really could be even after chatzos. So b'shas heter abamas kai, and we're talking about during the time when bamas are mutter. So what's and that's why the lav v'ha. So b'shas heter abamas kai. What does Rashi say? So the more kaidem chatzos to have a mechutz zman l'shmai. So it is a mechutz zman. B'shas heter abamas kamer. Kamay begilgul v'noy v'given the chutru bamas yachid. And the Torah is coming to tell you, there is a loisase. It's not mechutz zman because you really could bring it in the proper place. It's not mechutz zman. It's just you didn't bring it to the. We're talking about the b'shas heter abamas, but you could also bring it to noiv and given, and there you are allowed to bring the you're allowed to bring the chayva, and he didn't bring it to the. Since he didn't bring it to the chayiv, that's the reason he's chayiv. It's not because of mechutz zman. So this is this is not a good source for our lav. Okay, I'm gonna have to stop over here.